Hi, I'm Matt Carey, documentary editor, Deadline. Welcome to the Deadline Suite at the Cannes Film Festival. We are with the producer and director of Slauson Rec. We have the director, Leo Lewis O'Neill, to my left, and further to my left, the producer, Matt Zion. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, explain for us what Slauson Rec is in the context of this film. It's a theater company, sort of theater and dance company founded in Los Angeles by Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, this film, it's based on this theater company that Shia started down in South Central Los Angeles about in 2018. I joined the first session based on a tweet, showed up with a camera. I was not an actor. So finding my role, I basically started filming everything, and 7 years later, here we are.
And tell us about some of the things that you witnessed. It certainly was, from the very first frame, there's a tremendous energy that is unleashed by Shia LaBeouf, who's kind of a force of nature, but perhaps some of, he talks about being in AA. There's a certain things that he's kind of trying to work out and maybe get expressed through the students or foisted on the students to some degree.
Yeah, I think there was a level of, I think all of us that were in that group were looking to be a part of something, him included, and I think it was a little bit of a gym for him to exercise out different ideas or feelings or, I think it was kind of a gym for all of us.
Matt, how do you and the director shape a movie when you have 800 hours of footage?
For a movie like this, that is not your usual documentary. Your usual documentary is talented filmmaker finds a subject they're interested in and kind of enters a world. This was Leo's world. This movie is entirely seen through Leo's lived experience. And that was a very unique process, especially with the amount of footage we had. And my role as producer was to protect that process, was to give Leo what he needed to iterate, to explore, to figure out what he needed to say and how he ultimately felt about it, because it was viscerally personal. And we were super lucky to have an incredible, small but super passionate team, including an Oscar-winning editor helping Leo, and another editor who started as our AE but was so talented we promoted to editor, Danny Smite. And as producer, I was really I wanted to give Leo the room to find the story he lived.
Leo, what do you think Shia was trying to create with this company?
I think at this point in his life, he was trying to create community. And so I really think that. I think the majority of the performance art that he was doing kind of in this time was about community and garnering that together. So I think ultimately that was the goal. He talks about being lonely, about never feeling like he had any friends. And so I think for him, this was that. This was building a family of sorts,
Being there, from the very beginning and filming so much of it, what were things that, behavior, I guess might be the word that you perhaps thought as you were filming was a little bit disturbing, a little bit pushing the boundary? We hear in about the middle of the film from Bo, the co-creator of the Slauson Rec company, where he's very succinctly sort of describes, well, there's sometimes, Shia says things that are needed, sometimes it goes too far, sometimes you shouldn't say anything.
Yeah, I think that element comes in play with a lot of group creative processes, especially when you have volatile characters like Shia. And I think, there was an element of it where he got pushed past a certain limit. And that's what happens, I think. I think by the time that behavior started showing itself, I was so embedded in it, because at that point it was already, over a year, I'm filming every day. So at that point it was just my role. It was kind of my responsibility and just my role in the group to just film everything. So it was just kind of natural to keep rolling. There was never really any sort of judgments on it. I was just kind of in it.
Matt, what's your take on that? My take personally is that, he approached it from a place of earnestness. I mean, I don't think we're talking about a James Franco situation with his theater company. It was really something altogether different. Now, he may have gone too far, and one worries about the emotional health, let's say, or well-being of some of the people in the class, but he really seemed devoted to art. He sort of equates art with his God. And so I think that was his objective, whether he went about it in some ways that are questionable.
Yeah, I think that he really had noble intentions. And I think that the reality is he bit off more than he could chew. And there was no turning around from that once he did, which the doc gets into a little bit. And yeah, I don't think this was an experimental theater group set up with malicious intent at all. It did become something that was way too intense for the plan.
And I think we see that he's a natural leader in the sense that, I mean, if I'm walking into Slauson Rec, here's a guy who's been in tons of movies. He's very well known. He's a dynamic personality and artist, but he doesn't really want to be the leader of the group. And yet, if you don't have a leader, sometimes that's chaos.
Yeah, that was definitely the struggle for the first year and a half of the company, was trying to play out his leadership role, because he very early on realized that he could not be the leader, but we needed a leader. And so it was this weird battle to try to figure that dynamic out. So yes.
Yeah. Matt, tell us about the Route to Cannes Classics premiering here. You're premiering tonight.
This is actually a crazy story. We could send you this picture, but when we got this independently financed and we moved into our office, the first thing that Leo wrote on the brand new whiteboard was, "We can do it." And this was the dream.
CANNES.
Yes,
We can.
We can do it.
I get it.
And because we looked at all the schedules of all the festivals, and this was our favorite. This is the festival that awards bold choices and new voices, and we wrote it up there. We missed that first deadline, but
Well, we were ambitious enough to think that we could get it into Cannes in 2024.
Yeah.
I thought that I could turn 800 hours of footage into a film in 6 months. I was a little psychotic about that. I didn't know, And so a year later, it all worked out.
yeah.
Well, patience is rewarded in this case. And it is important to note that, Shia, you had final cut on this. This is by no means a vanity project. He didn't intervene in it, as I understand it, in any way. And in fact, even though he doesn't look great in some respects, you see him being somewhat explosive, kind of throwing chairs, pounding the table occasionally, shouting at students in a way that may make audience members uncomfortable watching it, but he's not trying to interrupt this film or, say, put the kibosh on it. Quite the opposite.
From early on, I realized that Shia was perhaps the most vulnerable artist I'd ever met in my entire life. There was a moment early on when I was still doing archival work, just filming class sessions early on. Something went kind of awry, tempers flared, and for that week's archive, I texted Shia and said, "Hey, this moment that kind of went left, I can take it out if you want, And he said, "Fuck no, keep it in." And from that moment, I knew that that's who he was, and he was going to be there, scars and all.
I noticed in the film, you're sort of like a fair-haired version of Shia. You look kind of similar. Has anyone said that? I don't know what that's about.
There's been people that have asked if I'm his brother at certain things,
right.
but I don't know. I don't really see it.
It's not just me. Release plans for the film going forward. What, if anything, can you tell us about that?
Nothing yet. I think that tonight is the world premiere, and those conversations will begin as soon as the lights go out.